This is Basic, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
I took my 5-year-old daughter with me to see how the software, whether my daughter liked the software. Well, my daughter loved it. And so I bought the company.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Jack Smyth was the first CEO of The Learning Company, the educational software publisher best known for Reader Rabbit and Rocky's Boots. He was also involved with Add-On Software, a company that sold CP/M software for several computer platforms, including the Atari 8-bit line. The company built a hardware card for use with the Atari 1090XL peripheral expansion box that would have added CP/M functionality to the Atari computers. That device was never sold, or at least was never widely available. This interview took place on March 8, 2018.
Went to Cornell out of high school, studied 4 years, got a degree in industrial engineering at Cornell. And I applied to business schools out of Cornell, got into several, including Stanford. Told Stanford I was going to accept, and then realized that the draft was going on. I had a low draft number. I think my draft number was 101, and realized I was going to be drafted if I went to business school because graduate school didn't exempt you from the draft. And then got a job offer from a company called the Lincoln Electric Company out of Cleveland, Ohio, which is my hometown. And they were quite confident that they could give me a draft deferment since Lincoln welders were being used by all the companies that were making goods to be shipped over to Vietnam for the war. So I sent a letter to Stanford and said, can I defer my acceptance until I'm 26 over draft age? And they said, nope, you'll have to reapply. So I said, well, I don't have any choice. So I went to work for Lincoln Electric. Worked for Lincoln in Chicago for 4 years, selling welding equipment and electric motors. Did quite well. Turned 26, decided it was time to go back to my original plan, which was to go to business school. Lincoln offered me the number one sales territory in the company, which was at the time in Peoria, to take over that territory. And the problem is that whatever I do 110 or 120%, and I couldn't see taking that position and then also going to night school to get my MBA. Mm-hmm. So I left the company and, I reapplied to Stanford and luckily got in again, which I couldn't believe. And then left the company and went to Stanford to business school in 1973. Graduated from business school in 75 and decided to stay in the Bay Area. So I got a job with a company called Tab Products Company, TAB, which was across the street from Hewlett-Packard and not far from Stanford. Did a couple of other things. Went to work for a small startup company. Started my own company doing computer supplies and accessories. So, your question was, how did I get in the computer industry? Well, my first job at Tab Products, Tab made equipment for the computer industry, storage equipment, tabulating machines. That's where the name came from. The punch cards, the old punch cards.
Sure.
I took over a division that sold bursters and decolators. Do you have any idea what
I
those
don't
are?
know what those words are, no.
Okay, the old computer paper that went through in the long list long trains of paper
Sure.
that went through the old printers,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the paper had carbon in between for multiple copies.
Sure.
And a burster was a machine. Well, I'll start with a decollator. A decollator is a machine that takes the paper and the carbon and separates it to put the paper in stacks and the carbon in another stack. And then you put the computer paper into a burster, and it breaks all the perforations and makes them into single sheets and staples them together. So you can have your reports in regular readable fashion as opposed to a long computer printout.
Neat.
So that's what bursters and decollators are. So I did that for a while, and then I started a company that sold computer supplies and accessories into the computer industry. It was called Challenge Computer Supplies, and then started. I think add-on software was probably next after Challenge Computer Supplies, and add-on software was a software distribution company that was distributing CPM software for Atari for a bunch of different personal computers. Atari, Osborne, Commodore 64, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And we had several different mail order catalogs that the manufacturers agreed to put in the box when they shipped the product out for people to look through and see if there was any additional software they wanted for their computer to run things like VisiCalc and what was the word processor that was popular back then?
WordStar?
WordStar, yeah. If you didn't know the codes, you couldn't use it.
I still remember some of those codes.
Yeah, I probably do too if somebody pressed me. But we had a full catalog of software and accessories for those computers that we then sold out of a warehouse in Lafayette, I think it was. Yeah, the flyer that you have on your website has our old address there. Livermore, I think it was Livermore, wasn't it? No, it was Lafayette.
Yeah.
And the problem was that we started that company shortly before. Oh, I know that company was actually after I did the learning company.
Oh, really?
So yeah, in 1980. I was a co-founder of the Learning Company, which is educational software for children, still around.
Mm-hmm.
And do you watch Shark Tank?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful,
Yeah.
made all his money by taking his educational software company out of Canada and merging it with the Learning Company. And then he structured the sale of the Learning Company to Mattel for several $1 billion. Mattel eventually destroyed the company, and Joe Berard, the president of Mattel at the time, got fired because of the Learning Company because they finally sold it for, I think, $500,000. Paid $3 billion, and they sold it for $500,000. Probably 2 years later.
Wow.
That's a good way to make money.
Yikes.
But I was at the Learning Company for 2 years, and one of the co-founders, an educator, was disagreeing with some of the things I wanted to do with the company. And at the time, my wife was about to deliver twins. So I had an opportunity to sell out my share in the company for twice what I put in. And so I sold it out and left and predicted that it would take at least 10 years for the company to be successful. And the sale to Mattel was 10 years later, and they had gone through 5 additional CEOs in those 10 years, and merged the company with Kevin O'Leary's company, and then sold it to Mattel. So anyway, I didn't make the millions and billions that O'Leary did, but I did okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started add-on software with another guy who had knowledge about CPM software. And we started that company just before the pundits were all saying it was going to be the year of the personal computer, and all these computers were going to be sold at Christmas time. And the market fell off the face of the earth that Christmas. So even though we had our catalogs in the boxes with the computers, not many of those computers were actually sold. So we ended up folding the company probably 15 months. I'd have to look back at my records, but it wasn't very long. It was less than 2 years that we had the company in business. And if you look at the records, the Atari machine that could run the CPM software was not selling very well that Christmas. And a lot of the companies that we were supporting went out of business shortly afterwards because of the horrible sales that they experienced that Christmas.
So you were...
That was probably 84.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
Christmas of 84, yeah.
So you were taking these software programs written in CPM, and were you doing the work of converting them to work on different systems, or were you just a reseller?
Well, we had a device that would plug into all these different computers and allow you to run the CPM software on those computers.
Right.
And that's what my partner and the other programmer that was listed on the flyer, they were the ones that created those little boxes that would allow the software to run on the computers.
So if I understand, I know that Atari was planning on releasing this expansion box. It was called the 1090. It was never really released. And I believe your company was building the card that would go in there that would allow the computers to run CPM. Does that sound familiar?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So your company and your group actually...
I'm looking for one of the catalogs from back then, and I don't think I have them in this filing cabinet, so I won't be able to put my finger on it right away. But that's exactly what we did.
So I assume that did you build a lot of these things and then weren't able to sell them, or did they never really get built?
We didn't build that many of them for the Atari. We were also selling, as I mentioned, for Osborne and Commodore, a couple others. And, we sold quite a few products to Osborne customers. But we didn't sell many, if any, to Atari customers. But I do have a catalog that was put in the Atari boxes.
Oh, neat.
And I have it somewhere, but it's not here in this filing cabinet.
If after we talk, if I could borrow all the catalogs you have, and I would like to scan them and add them to the website so that we can see what could have been.
Yeah. Actually, I probably have enough that I kept that I can send you one of each.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yeah, I mean, I'll take any catalogs you have for any platforms, and we'll just get it all scanned, and that would be great. Some great history.
Yep.
Cool. All right, so it sounded like this company didn't last very long. Was it successful in any way? Was it a complete financial failure, or was it just how did it go?
Well, we actually had about 15 employees, and when it was obvious after that horrible Christmas that things were not going to be successful, we helped them all find new jobs, and then there was an outstanding loan that I had personally guaranteed that I had to pay back. So it was a failure.
Okay. All right, so are we anything else to say about add-on software, or should we go back to the learning company?
We can go back to learning company.
Okay.
Now,
so all right. So tell me about why the learning company was founded, and
okay.
what was the vision, and tell me about the start of it.
Sure. So there were two programmers and two educators who had received a National Science Foundation grant to create educational software for children. And they created a product called Rocky's Boots that was a program that taught children Boolean logic in a game format. Mm-hmm. And this was back in the late 70s. And this was when there were only Apple computers available as personal computers. And I don't know, when did the Atari come out?
1979.
79.
Yeah.
So and Apple.
The Apple, yeah, was 76, 77, something like that.
So when that program was designed, it was the only thing available was the Apple computer. So it was created on that, and then the four people negotiated the rights to take the program and sell it commercially. And they had decided they wanted to create a company. So they found me. I had just sold Challenge Computer Supplies to my partner. I had sold out of Challenge Computer Supplies, and a friend of mine was in the education supplies business, and he suggested to these people that they talk to me about helping them to create the company. So I remember my first, I'll call it interview with the company. I took my 5-year-old daughter with me to see how the software, whether my daughter liked the software. And, you know, the old story, Mikey likes it.
Sure.
Well, my daughter loved it. And so I bought the company. No, I agreed to come on as CEO. I negotiated a venture loan to the company, venture funding. It wasn't a loan, equity funding. And I put personal money into the company and became CEO. And I was there for 2 years. And then the gal who was actually chairman, the educator who came up with the whole idea in the first place, she and I were in violent disagreement about how we should work with IBM when IBM was coming out with their PC Junior. Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah.
And IBM came to us and said, we want your software to be part of our rollout of the PC Junior, but you need to convert it to run on the IBM machine. So we agreed to do that, and while we were negotiating that agreement, which the negotiations were the most interesting negotiations I've ever been involved in my life.
How come?
They flew me down to Boca Raton, where their PC division was headquartered, and they gave us a code name for the device, the PC Junior,
Mm-hmm.
and my attorney advised me that the code name they gave me was unique to our company. That was their way of finding out if anybody leaked information.
Ah, okay.
And so I immediately created a different code name that I told my staff was the name of the code name for the PC Junior. So if anything leaked out, it couldn't be traced back to us.
Nice.
But my attorney was Gordon. He's now chairman of one of the largest San Francisco law firms, Gordon Davidson. And he was representing our company, the Learning Company, in negotiating with IBM. He was also representing another company that was negotiating for their products on the PC Junior. And in the morning, he had the negotiating sessions for this other company, and then in the afternoon, he was sitting with me in our negotiating session. And I remember that one of the IBM attorneys came in, and they traipsed about 5 or 6 different people in to negotiate different parts of the contract with us. And this one attorney came in and was talking about some details on the contract, and my attorney, Gordon, said, well, we talked about that this morning. And the attorney said, I'm not sure that I know what you're talking about, because we do not discuss any other discussions with any other companies in meetings with other companies. And he said, well, my position is the same as it was this morning. And she said, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about. And he was getting so mad that he was going to blow the whole discussion and the whole negotiation. And so I actually asked for a timeout. I asked for the IBM people to leave the room, and I said, Gordon, so I understand how you feel. I understand that you think it's ridiculous that this lady will not acknowledge that she had this discussion with you, but you are now sitting with the Learning Company with me. And I do not want you to jeopardize this negotiation. I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play a little game. And I picked something that I knew that they were going to bring up at some point in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I think they're going to bring it up in the next hour. What do you think? And he said, no, it's going to be in the next 2 hours. I said, okay, let's pay attention to that and see when they bring it up. And we bet, I don't know, $5 or something. And I won the bet because they brought it up within the next hour. but it was, a little tenuous. And then at one point in the negotiation, they told us that there was going to be a penalty if we delivered code late, because they were on a timetable to get this product launched.
Sure.
And I said, okay, I understand. I said, but what if we delivered early? I want a bonus. And they said, well, we never do that. I said, well, we're not going to pay a penalty if we deliver late. And so they finally agreed, and they said, okay, we'll pay you a bonus if you deliver error-free code early. And I don't know if you know anything about programming, but delivering error-free code is almost impossible.
Sure.
So we finally capitulated and said, fine, we'll do that. And this whole contract was a 6-figure contract that was going to make or break our company. So we signed the contract, and then I went back and reported back to the board, and specifically the chairman. And the chairman was just livid that I would kowtow to, this big IBM and agree to their ridiculous requirements. And I said, I did what I had to do to get the deal, and that's going to save our company and keep us going. So it was the right thing to do. And she pounded on the table and said that I was a horrible CEO, and I was, running the company into the ground by agreeing to these demands from this big corporation. So I realized that she and I were not going to get along together. Oh, and the other thing she said was that the company was developed to teach people how to build computers. And I said, well, the software that we're making is going to teach people how to use computers. And there are a lot more people that are going to be using computers than are going to be building computers.
Mm-hmm.
And she, again, was just adamant that people have to know how to build computers. I said, Ann, you drive a car. Do you know how to build a car? She said, well, yeah, I could probably build a car. And I said, well, most people can't and don't want to, but they sure as hell want to use them. And I said, that's what's going to happen with personal computers, is people are going to want to use them, but they aren't going to want to build them. They aren't going to want to know how things go together and how they're made. They just want to know how they can use it to do what they need to do. And so we had a very strong philosophical disagreement on that. So I saw the writing on the wall and realized that it was going to be an uphill battle. And so since my wife was about to deliver twins, I decided to sell out my share in the company and take 6 months off and help raise twins. I knew I'd never have another chance to do that again.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Nice. So how long were you at the learning company altogether?
2 years.
2 years. I was looking at,
and we built it up to about $2 million in sales.
Yeah.
In those 2 years before I left.
Nice. So at that point, it wasn't even the Atari era by the time you left, it sounds like. It wasn't. Yeah. So you guys did Rocky Boots and was the big one, the big early one, and then later on you did Reader Rabbit, I believe. That came much later.
Reader Rabbit and Writer Rabbit, yeah. Gertrude's Secrets and Juggles Games were some of the early ones. And my wife came up with the name of the learning company and the TLC logo.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, the company was called Advanced Learning Technologies, ALT.
Mm-hmm.
And we felt that name wasn't conducive to drawing people into software. So we brainstormed, and actually I think we had a brainstorming session in the staff members of the company. We came up with the name of the learning company, and then my wife was a graphic artist, and she designed the original logo and the TLC logo for the company. And then we went to the guy that was doing all of Apple's PR and had him do some PR work for us. And through him, we had the logo redone and the packaging redone. And then that firm, God, I can't think of their name, big PR firm that did all of Apple stuff and was one of the reasons Apple was so successful. Anyway, they created a full-sized caricature stuffed animal, I'll call him, of Bumble, one of the characters for our products.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to get the largest software distribution company, a company called SoftCell,
Sure.
to pick up the Learning Company products. And I had sent some products down to them. They had done some testing, and they said the products were great. They loved them, thought they were going to be very successful, but they hadn't ordered anything from us. And I had been trying to get a hold of the product manager. He wasn't returning my calls. So I decided that Bumble and I would fly down to LA from San Francisco and just go into SoftCell and pick up an order. So I carried this full size. It was about probably 5 feet high. Carried this full-sized stuffed animal on the airplane. I had to take his head off to fit him in the overhead compartment. And then went into SoftCell and went up to the receptionist. And I said, I'm here to see Scott. Can't remember Scott's last name, the product manager, director of product management. And put Bumble on the reception desk. And I said, Bumble's here to get an order. And I went and sat down and left Bumble sitting on the reception desk. And in the next half hour, 45 minutes, I think everybody in the whole company came by the reception desk to see what was going on. And to make a long story short, Bumble and I walked away with a large order. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. What do you do today?
I'm semi-retired,
mm-hmm.
but for the past 15 years, I have been teaching and coaching high-speed driving.
Wow.
People who drive on road courses like Formula One and sports car racing.
Mm-hmm.
I teach them how to go faster on race courses. And so I recently picked up 2 part-time jobs. One of them is helping a guy that sells safety equipment like helmets and fire suits and Nomex underwear and fluids for race cars and racers. And we have a big trailer that we take to the racetrack during race weekends. We're going to be down in Angleton, Texas, which is south of Houston, at a track called Motorsports Ranch Houston. And there's an event called the High Speed Driver Education Event, HPDE, that's going on at that track. And we're taking the trailer down to sell all of our equipment and supplies. And then my other part-time job is helping a fellow who owns a track in Hitchcock, Texas, which is 15 miles north of Galveston. He has a 1.3-mile road course on a property that used to be an old blimp base back in the Second World War. And so there's all this concrete that was put in for tarmac and a lot of heavy trucks and equipment. So it's just a really thick concrete, and he built a racetrack on that concrete surface, and then we're going to expand the racetrack another mile to make it a 2.3-mile road course. And we're putting in clubhouses and bathrooms and garages and carports and make it into a motorsports country club for people that like to take their sports cars and drive them on racetracks. So I'm helping him with building that facility. So I'm having all kinds of fun, heavily involved in getting paid for doing my hobby.
That's awesome. Good job. Nice. All right. I think this is my last question.
Okay.
So if you could send a message to the kids that grew up using Learning Company games and now they're adults with fond memories of them, I'm sure. What message would you send?
The message I'll send is that computers can be useful for learning things that help you in life. They can also be used for things that might be fun but are not very productive. And I'm specifically thinking of shoot 'em up games that you play on computers. I don't think that that's a good use of computers because it just gives the wrong impression about what war and killing is all about.
Mm-hmm.
But doing things like learning writing skills, learning reading skills, learning math skills can be a lot of fun on the computer, and everybody should encourage parents to use those programs to help teach their children things that they'll need in their lives.
Good answer.
So remember how much fun you had learning those things and how much fun either your kids or your grandkids can have continuing to use the programs that are useful for teaching life skills.
Thank you so much, Jack.
Okay. Good luck.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute, there are two ways you can help. You can help fund these interviews directly by contributing to my Patreon. A small monthly contribution will help offset the expenses of making these oral history interviews. Contribute at patreon.com/Savitz. Or make a tax-deductible contribution to the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library that has done incredible things to preserve computer history. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate. Thanks.